the call today. We are waiting on another person, but I think she'll just have to join us over the course of the call and jump in as things go along. I wanted to just quickly welcome you to the introductory webinar today on the Vermont Mentoring Database. For those of you who don't know me, I'll give you a quick introduction. My name is Benji Thurber, and I'm the Communications and Technology Manager at Mobius, Vermont's Mentoring Partnership. I'm going to be joined on the call today by our Executive Director, Chad, who's going to spend some time later on in the call just answering questions about evaluation and survey options in the system, and he'll also talk us through the pricing structure for the full version of the database. Before we get started, I'd like to just take a quick moment here to thank some people whose efforts were really crucial in making this project possible. First of all aspects of the system were constructed based on direct feedback and discussion, and a lot of hard work by a volunteer design team of mentoring programs from around the state who I worked very closely with over the past year and a half to come up with basically what the system was going to do, what it was going to look like, and just making sure that everything that we were doing here was informed by the interests of the programs who are going to be using the system. I also want to give a quick shout out to Paula Francis, formerly of the Vermont Mentoring Funders Collaborative. She's now working with Mobius during our first year of taking over grant-making responsibilities for that funding group, which dissolved earlier this year when Mobius became the state mentoring partnership. Paula and I have been working very closely on this project for more than a year and a half. I think I speak for both of us when I say it's been great to finally see all of our hard work and the hard work of the programs who helped us in its construction to see the system come to fruition. Lastly, a huge thank you to Eddie Gale and the A.D. Henderson Foundation, who provided funding for the design of the system and also for the first year of implementing the project. So you'll see in front of you on the screen right now, I have just a brief agenda and an overview of what we're going to talk about on today's call. So I'd like to spend the majority of the call giving you a general overview of the system and sort of giving you a sense of how everything works. Because there's going to be a lot to go through over the next hour, it would be great if you guys could all type your questions in the chat window on the right if you think of them. I've muted everybody for the time being just so that we can get through and make sure that we can all hear what's going on, but I will give everybody the chance to chime in at the end when we do our discussion of surveys and pricing and also do our just general Q&A session. I'm hoping that we can spend about 45 minutes just on the walking through the system and Chad's overview of the surveys and the pricing, and then we'll have at least 20 minutes, if not more, for us to just go over people's general questions. If for whatever reason you have a question this afternoon and we don't get to answer it, you can feel free to call or email us after the call and we'll get right back to you. So I want to just quickly jump in and give you an overview of the two versions of the system. We had several questions on this going into the call of, what is the free version of the database and what's the paid version and sort of what are the differences. So I thought I would go ahead and walk you through what each of those parts consists of. So the brief overview, the basic version of the system is open to all mentoring agencies in the state. It's free, and the idea is it allows you to maintain a web presence on the Mobius website. So you get your own page for your mentoring agency and your programs. So basically you maintain a profile in the Vermont Mentoring Database, and that information gets transported over to the Mobius website, which I'll walk you through in a minute. And you'll also have the ability to apply for grants. The full version of the system, the paid version, has all of that basic functionality that I just discussed, but it also acts as a mentoring program management tool. So it's a way for you to organize and track your information on your mentees, your mentors, and as well as other things like your relationships with community organizations. And it gives you the ability to gather outcome data on the effectiveness of mentoring. There are also additional functions for tracking events, donations, attendance, and as Chad's going to talk about at the end of the call, there's a system of surveys built in as well. So I've created and populated a demo agency for us to go through all this on the call today called Mentoring Inc. So all of the data in here is fake. I'm sure you may recognize some of the names, but I assure you that any relation to real people or events is strictly coincidental. With that in mind, I'm going to hop over to System and log in as a basic user so that you can see what the basic user level looks like. So as a basic user level, this is what you're going to see when you log into the system. There are a series of tabs over here on the left. There's one for agencies, one for programs, one for grant applications, and then a document library. And I'll quickly walk you through what each of these tabs allows you to do. So the agency tab allows you to go in and update information about your agency. So you have your basic, the name of your agency, your contact at the agency, and just basic, your address and website. You also have the ability to upload a photo, a quote about mentoring, a logo for your agency, and a caption for the photo as well. And I'll show you how those come into play in a minute. But if you scroll down a little bit here, you'll see that there's information about just your fiscal agent information, and this is just for the purpose of applying for grants. Information about the counties that your agency serves, towns that are served, the different types of mentoring programs that you have under your agency, as well as just your target population and just some more information about what your agency and programs do. On this field here, instructions to mentor applicant, gives kind of an overview of the agency for somebody who's interested in applying, and I'll show you in a second how that shows up. So I'm going to quickly pop over to the Mobius website right now and show you how you would find Mentoring Inc. In our statewide directory on the website. So there's a section here that says Find a Mentoring Program near you. You would select the statewide directory of programs. Now from within this directory, there are multiple ways that you can search for an agency. I'm just going to go ahead and do it alphabetically and go over to where Mentoring Inc. is going to show up. You'll see here that the different types of programs that Mentoring Inc. serves show up right here in this listing, as well as the counties that it's active in. So you'll see here that the logo for Mentoring Inc. that's uploaded in the database shows up on the right. You have your contact information from the database, the quote about mentoring here from Tom Brady, and then also that section I showed you before, that's the instructions to mentor applicant, shows up here as the overall information about applying for becoming a mentor in this agency. You also see under here that there are multiple programs listed under the agency, and they all have more specific information about the minimum age to be a mentor, the age range of the youth who are in the program, what the minimum time commitment is, and how often the mentors and mentees meet, as well as information on how to contact the program coordinator. I'm going to quickly hop out of the agency section here and go over to programs and just show you quickly how you go about adding a program to the system. So you'll see here that all the programs that are listed on the web page are being pulled directly from this profile in the Vermont Mentoring Database. If you wanted to add a new program, or edit information, you can do it from this section. And so you'll see the options here for minimum age of youth served, maximum age of youth served, the program coordinator information, and all of this will automatically get pulled over to the web page for this agency on the website. The third tab in this section of the basic user level of the database is where you can actually apply for grants. And so you'll see here that there are two active grant opportunities that you can apply for. So if you want to take a closer look at what one of these grants is, you can just look at like the view button here, and you'll see a full overview of the grant, as well as a link to the full guidelines for more information on what you need to be qualified to apply. And to apply for one of these grants, you simply click on Apply for this grant, select whether or not you're a school or an NGO, and you'll be transported to this form where you can fill in more information and send in a formal application. If you all have more questions about the grant application aspect of this, I encourage you to reach out to Chad or myself after this call. The last section in here is the document library, and this is just a place where you can have access to basically resources for free from around the state. So there might be like a sample program budget template that can be of use to you, a statement of insurance form, the Vermont Mentoring Core Standards, the most up-to-date version you can download here by clicking on the View button and then just simply downloading it as a PDF. You'll also have the ability to add users to the system at the same basic user level. So if you had one person who wanted to be able to go in to update information, and you had a different person at your agency who wanted to apply for a grant, you could have more than one user in here as well. So that is basically what you get with the basic user level of the system. So what I'm going to actually switch over to now is talking with you about the full version of the database. So I'll give you a quick overview of what we're going to talk about with the full version of the system. The first thing we're going to go through is the online mentor application. So one of the exciting things about this system is that mentors can actually apply for mentoring programs online, and this is a way to get information into the system and cut down on the amount of data entry that programs have to do. It also allows for a very streamlined system in terms of going through and checking references and approving an application, which I'll go through in a minute. I'm also going to walk through how to enter a mentee into the system, how to make a match between a youth and a mentor, how to view your matches and close them, and how to use the system as a mentor. So mentors are actually going to be able to log into the system if your program chooses to use that functionality, and they'll be able to send information about sessions when they meet with their mentees, as well as submit surveys. I'll also walk through how to track attendance at events or classes or workshops that your programs are holding. And then lastly, we're going to talk through the survey system. So the first thing I'm going to do is just kind of walk you through how the online application works. So each mentoring program is going to have access to its own online mentor application if it wants to use this aspect of the system. And so I'll hop back over to Mentoring Inc.'s page here, and you'll see that there's a link to fill out an online application to become a mentor that automatically shows up on our website. And so if I click on that link, it brings us to the Mentoring Inc. application here, and you'll see again that this little blurb that was entered in the database as information about the agency shows up at the top of the online application. So the application basically includes contact information for the mentor, information that's required by the Vermont Mentoring Core Standards, so information about previous residences, previous employment, emergency contact information, just basic demographic information. And then we're looking to just collect information about how did you hear about this program, so that on an aggregate level and on a program level too, you can get a sense of where mentors are coming from, how they're hearing about mentoring, and use that information to help expand recruitment efforts down the road. There are some fields in here, you'll notice that this part of the application is a little bit longer. There are some fields in here that can be turned on or off per agency based on how much information you want to collect. Some programs are really interested in getting like more of a feel for what the mentor or mentee's interests are and just getting more specific about what the mentor's background is. And so you'll see that there are a lot of fields that show up here, and some of them can be turned on and off. There's also information here that might be relevant to school-based programs, but not to community-based programs, or vice versa. So you have, for example, a school-based program might not be collecting information about driver's license and reliable transportation, but that information would be more relevant to a community-based program, so some of these questions can be turned off as well. And then we have this availability question and a release at the bottom. Basically, this is the ability for the program to track whether or not a mentor can have his or her photo or quotes published in the media. And we also have a second release that a mentor can agree to sign off if the program chooses to have the photograph or quote be used at a statewide level with Mobius's outreach work as well. So once a mentor applies to become a mentor, once a potential mentor applies to become a mentor in the system, this application form will automatically get transported over to your agency profile in the system. So I'm going to go ahead and log in as an administrator at Mentoring Inc. and show you what an application looks like when it comes through. So Bill Rowell is a full user of the system, so he has access to all of the great functionality that we're going over right now. You'll see when he logs in, he has access to this home screen here, which has announcements, and so this is information that is coming in from the statewide admin level into the system, and then there's also the ability for him to update information that everybody just specifically within Mentoring Inc. will see. There's the section here that's reminders. So if you have things that you want to follow up on and you want to make sure that they show up in our tracks, they'll pop up here at the top of the home screen when you log in. There are other little handy widgets here on the home screen too. So this one shows mentee birthdays, matches with no activities. So this is a great way to track whether or not your mentors and mentees are meeting and submitting session information. Some of them might not be submitting the information about their meetings this way, but this is just a way to track who you need to follow up with. Match anniversary, so if a mentor and a mentee have been matched for a year and their anniversary is coming up, that will pop up here. Mentor birthdays, and then if you're tracking, if you're applying for a grant in the system, you can see right here like what the status is of your current applications, and also just have handy access for edits to the application. I'm going to pop over now to the Improve Applications tab here on the left, which is going to give us the ability to see when a new application comes in, how to approve it and add the person to the system. So Ned Flanders here has applied to become a mentor at Mentoring Inc. And so you'll see all the information here is that basically matches that form that we were looking at before. Ned has given us all of his background information, and including his references, which are all stored down here. And he signed off on the release forms at the bottom. So we have access to his full application here, and we can actually print that to a PDF and save it as a hard copy, as a file, or if you wanted to print it and have a paper copy, you'll have that ability to store the application in any way that you need to for your agency. But this section up here is actually a great way to have a checklist of going through the process of approving somebody to be a mentor. So you can go through and select information about each of the references that you contact, and making sure that you have positive references for each, and marking the dates when you go through and do this. You can go through all the different background check information here. You can track who reviewed the application. You can track when the interview of the potential mentor happened, and that the date that the applicant is actually informed of whether or not he or she becomes a mentor. And as you're going through the process, there are a series of options here at the top. So there's save and go back to list. So what that means is if you're partway through the process of approving this applicant, you can save your progress and come back to it later. If the person is ready to become a mentor, you can go ahead and approve the application. And I'll show you what happens when you do that in a minute. There are two options for declining somebody in the system. There's declined, not right program fit, and declined as a mentor. And basically what that means is if you decline somebody as a mentor, and I have this written up here in the descriptive text above as well, but declining somebody as a mentor indicates that you don't think that the person would make a good mentor. Declined, not right program fit is a little bit different. It basically means that this program wasn't the right fit, but the applicant might be a good fit for another mentoring program. So maybe it just had something to do with the scheduling didn't work out. Maybe the potential mentor was more interested in working with a different age group, or had like a specific type of activity in mind that just didn't match up with what your program had to offer, but the person could still be a good volunteer somewhere else. So for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm just going to go ahead and assume that everything went through with Ned, and we're going to go ahead and approve his application. So in order to complete the process of approving him, I have to select a program for him to be active in. And we're going to make him active in the program Mentors. For some agencies, there may only be one program, but many agencies have more than one. And so that's why you need to select a program in that section. You'll see now that Ned shows up in this list as approved. And if we go over to the Mentors tab on the left, this will list all of the mentors in the agency, as well as their status in the program. So you can see matches who are closed, who are active unmatched, which means basically they're ready to be matched in the program, but they don't have a mentee as of right now. And then you can also see mentors who are currently matched. So you see now that Ned shows up in this part of the system now as an active unmatched mentor. So he's been approved to be a part of the Mentors program, but he doesn't have a mentee yet. Now if I click on Ned's name, I'm brought over to his profile section here, which has a couple of different tabs that I'm going to go through, and a couple of them will come back to a little bit later. So the basic info section, this has information that's just brought over from that application. Basically the stuff that's most relevant to contact information, and as well as emergency contact, and what his availability is and where he came from. So the referral source, how he heard about the program. The mentor status here, this is the status that we set when we approved his application. So it says approved/active, and this is just what his status is in the program, so we know that he is a potential mentor who can now be matched with a mentee. The Applications tab stores a complete copy of the application that he submitted. And so you'll always have this for your records stored in his profile, and if for whatever reason you want to, as I said before, have a hard copy of it, you can always print the PDF. The Mentoring tab is where eventually we're going to match Ned with a mentee, but for now, we'll skip this tab. what we're going to do now is look for a potential mentee for Ned, and I'm going to show you how you would add a youth to the system. So if you go over to the mentees section, you'll see, similar to the mentor section, you have a complete list of all the mentees in the system. And similar to the mentor section, you have them listed by active unmatched, closed, or active matched. So you can kind of see where everybody is in the system. And even after a mentor match has been closed, or somebody exits the program, you'll have their information from when they were in the program on file so that you can report on it. And as far as adding a new youth goes, you would go over to this Add a New Mentee button on the right. And similar to the mentor application, this is just storing basic information about the mentee. You'll note that there are a lot of fields in this section. Some of them programs may not have access to or may not want to store. Only the fields that have an asterisk next to them are required. And so you can store things like whether or not the mentee has a media release form on file, whether or not they have the permission form for participating in the program. And then there's information below where you can store demographic information that you may need to report on for grants and that you may want to have for your records as well. So things like whether or not the child has a parent who's incarcerated, is living in poverty, receiving free or reduced lunch, or somebody who is a foster care child, or any of these options here. You'll note as well that there's information about gender and ethnicity. And I will point out that for the ethnicity question, just as one general example, there's always the option to say I'd rather not say or unsure, even though it's a required field. And at the bottom of the application, at the bottom of this form that you fill out, you have the ability to, similar to what you did when you added the mentor to the system, you add a status for the mentee and make them approved in order to actually add them as an active potential mentee in the program. So I'm now going to hop back over to the mentee section and find a potential mentee for our new mentor, Ned Flanders. So at the top here, we have Bart Simpson, who is an active unmatched mentee. If I click on Bart, I'm going to be brought to a profile setup that's very similar to the mentor one we were looking at before. So this has all the information that's submitted in that form we were just looking at a minute ago. So we have address, some demographic information, just skills and interests that he has that might match up with a potential mentor, his availability, and when, where he came from, basically, like who referred him to the program. In this case, it was a teacher. This program status tab, very similar to the mentor status tab that I showed you in Ned's profile before. It just gives you the ability to track whether or not Bart is an active participant in the program. And if, for whatever reason, he is no longer active, you can add a new status here and change him to closed if he decides that he's going to be leaving the program. This mentoring tab is very similar to the one that I showed you before on the mentor side. This is where you actually go through the processes of matching a mentor with a mentee. And there are a couple other tabs over here that I'll just briefly go over. There's outcomes/tests, and this is kind of just a place that we're hoping that programs, if they have custom information that they're tracking on a mentee, can make use of this system. It's very open-ended in terms of what you can track here. There's the Documents tab, which allows you to store any sort of relevant information that goes along with this mentee. So maybe you have a signed permission form you want to keep on file with the mentee. So if you have Bart's signed permission slip, you could scan it and upload it here as a PDF and just store it in its file. There's a case notes section, so if you want to make specific case notes and observations about mentee, this is one place that you can track that information. And lastly, there's this reminders tab, which allows you to create a reminder which will show up on the home screen when you log in. So if I were to add a new reminder, I can create one that starts today and say, the other neat thing about the reminder setup is that you can actually, if you have multiple users in the system, you can have the reminder go to a different user. So if you wanted to send a message to somebody else as a reminder, you could leave it for them when they log in. But if I set this reminder, Bart is ready to be matched and is eager for a mentor. If I go back to the home screen, that now pops up as a reminder here. And so we're actually going to go through the process of matching Bart, so I'm going to mark this reminder as completed. And now it disappears from the section. So I'll go back into Bart's file here, go over to the mentoring tab in this profile, and by clicking on this button on the right, I'm going to add a new match. So we're going to match him with the mentor that we added to the system earlier, Ned Flanders. And the first match in the program. I'll set the match status to active, indicating that they are now going to be an active mentoring match. And then this is a community-based program, so I'm going to select that that's the match type here. And there's also the option if a mentor and a mentee are meeting at, if a program has more than one site, you can indicate which site the mentor and the mentee are meeting at. So in this case, we'll say that they're meeting at MLK Middle School. So you can see now that Ned Flanders is Bart's mentor and that they're an active match in the program. So if I hop over to the All Matches screen by clicking on this tab on the left, this is where you can see information about all the mentors and mentees who are matched or have been matched in your program. So you'll see there are active matches and closed matches. There's also the option to have on summer break. So if you have a school-based program and you have a mentor and a mentee who were meeting as of the end of the school year and you're not sure whether or not they're going to continue to meet, you can set their status to on summer break and then reassess when the new school year starts. So you'll see now that Ned and Bart are showing up here as active matches in the program. And so I'll go through a couple different things that you can track. First of all, if you wanted to add information about when they meet, you could click on this Add Session button. And then this gives the program coordinator the ability to track information as it's related to him or her. And there are a couple different options here. This is a pretty open-ended form. People can use it to store information any way that they would like to, but it gives you the ability to track information about how the match is going, essentially, and what the mentor is observing from it. And you'll see now, after you submit that session data, it shows up here under the match, and you can see every single time that the mentor and the mentee met. So this is one way to track information about your mentors and mentees meeting. There are other ways to track it as well, but this is just, it's a feature of the system that you can make use of if it's useful for your program. So what I'm going to do now is go ahead and show you how a mentor can access the system and how a mentor on his end, in this case Ned's end, can actually submit that session information in addition to the program coordinator being able to do it on his or her side. So if I go back to the mentor section, and actually I'm going to do this from within the matches section just to show you how easy it is to get to a mentor or mentee's file. If I go to Ned Flanders here, I see there's this little magnifying glass next to his name. If I click on that, it actually brings me right over to his file. And what I'm going to do now is assign him a password so that he can log into the system too. So under contact information, you have his email address listed, and now there's the option to add a password. And I'm going to go ahead and give him a password to log into the system. As far as the login screen for getting into the database as a mentor, it's very straightforward. If you go to the vtmentoring.civicore.com homepage, you'll have the option below user login to, there's a link here that says to log in as a mentor. Click here. And if you click on that, you're brought over to the mentor login screen. So you see that the first thing that a mentor sees when he or she logs into the system is this simple home screen, which is just a place for the agency to have like a brief overview or message. So you'll see that in this case, Bill or another administrator at Mentoring Inc. left a message. Mentors, if you've not already done so, please submit your 6-month mentor survey. There's also a reminder for weekly kickball games. And those are different announcements that can be edited at the agency level and just be targeted towards mentors. It's a pretty simple setup here. So there are really 2 different sections for mentors when they log in. There's My Information, so a mentor can update his or her first and last name, just email address and password here. And then the more pertinent section here is My Matches. And this will allow the mentor to access information about and submit information about all of the mentoring matches in the system. So Ned in this case is just matched with Bart, so you'll see it showing up here. But he could be matched with any number of mentees in different programs, and they would all show up in this section. So if you click on the Show Sessions button here, he'll be able to see the session that we submitted earlier as Bill. And he'll also have the option to add a session of his own. So we'll say that they met the following week. So in this case, the second meeting didn't go as well. So I'm going to click on this button here that says check if you need immediate attention. And this doesn't mean that this isn't implying that there's a dangerous situation that requires immediate attention from the coordinator or from the emergency contact. What this means is that that the mentor is looking for some follow-up from the program coordinator, and I'll show you where that gets indicated in a bit. So I'm going to go ahead and submit this session, and then I'm just going to quickly show you this other section here on the right, where you can add surveys. So as a mentor, if you're prompted by your program coordinator to submit a survey about your experience with your mentee, you would do it here. And so there are a couple of different options here. Chad's going to actually walk us through how the surveys work a little bit later on in the call. They're still in the process of being finalized, but they were drawn up based on input from mentoring programs from around the state, just pooling best practices and looking at what different programs are doing and trying to come up with a nice standardized system. And again, these are a feature that we welcome you to take advantage of if it makes sense for your program. So there are 3 different types of surveys. There's pre-match, during match, and exit. And each survey has different questions, and you'll see that the options below change based off of which time period you select. And again, we'll go into that in greater detail later in the call. So you'll see here, if for whatever reason as an agency admin you get stuck in the mentor section, there's this link here that says log in as an administrator. Click here, and that will bring you back over to the admin login side. So there's another tab over here on the left that's called Approved Mentoring Time. And now that I'm logged back in as Phil, I can see this session that Ned submitted. And I can see the date. If I click on the View button, I can see all the information that he submitted, and I actually have the ability to approve it. But there's also this other column here that says check if need immediate attention. Since that's checked yes, I know that I need to follow up with him as well. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and just approve this mentoring time, and you'll see that that disappears from here. And now if I go back to the All Matches screen and click on Show Sessions for Ned and Bart, this second session that, that Ned submitted will show up here as well. I want to just quickly go through the process of closing a mentor and a mentee out. You saw that when we first logged into the database, there's a reminder here to follow up with Tim Tebow. Follow up with Tim Tebow's mentor, Tom Brady, to see how his match is going so far. And so since I see that this is happening, I'm going to follow up with them, and we can assume that for whatever reason, the match is just not working out. So it's gotten to the point where we decide that we need to close them out as a mentoring match and move on. So you'll see at the top there an active mentoring match currently. They've met a few times. And if I go over to edit within this section of the match, I'll have the ability to switch this match status here from active to closed. And now that we know that they're going to be closed, I'm prompted to list a closure date and also a reason for the closure too. So in this case, we'll say that the youth lost interest or withdrew. And now you'll immediately see that they show up, instead of being an active match, they're now a closed match. So there are two things that I need to do to follow up on this now. So I need to determine whether or not Tom and Tim are just incompatible as a match. It might be suitable for other matches in the program, or if they're just done with the program completely. So in this case, Tim Tebow he lost interest and things weren't going the way that it didn't seem to be a good fit for him in the program. So we're going to go over to his file and go back to this program status tab here. So when I first added Tim as an active mentee who could be matched with a mentor, we made him approved active back in February. Now we're going to add a new status now that we've determined that he no longer wants to be a part of the program. And there's a comment section here where you can give more detailed information about why the mentee is no longer involved in the program. So now when I go over to the mentee section, excuse me, I'm going to backtrack here and make sure I'm closing him out in the correct program. The program no longer exists. Interesting. Apologize for the brief technical glitch there. He was apparently approved in a fake program that is no longer active. And now if we go back over to the mentee section, you'll see that Tim Tebow shows up as closed. And if we had left his status in the program as approved active, even though he didn't have a mentor, he would show up here as active unmatched and ready to be matched with another mentor. Now I'm going to hop back over to the matches section and click on Tom Brady. So Tom was really excited about the mentoring program, and even though things didn't work out with Tim, he still wants to be a part of the program. So you'll see that his status right now says active unmatched. That's because he was in a mentoring relationship, but it was closed out. So if I click over here, you'll see that he's approved/active. And so if I go over to the mentors section, that list of all the mentors in the system, we'll see that Tom Brady shows up here as active unmatched, so I know that he's somebody from this potential pool that could be matched with another mentee. So that's a basic overview of how the mentor and mentee setup works in the system. I'm now going to give you just a quick overview on a couple other aspects of functionality in here. So there's this tab here called Organizations, which allows you to track just relationships that your mentoring agency and programs might have with agencies and just other organizations in the community. So just as an example, we have here like the Stowe Credit Union. This could be somebody who's a potential donor. And if you go into an organization, there's a set of 6 tabs here. The first one is just basic info with information about the agency or organization, contact information, a contact name. If you go over to the next tab, relationships, this is a place for you to be able to track if you have a connection either from a different organization or from a mentor in the system who, for whatever reason, has a connection to the credit union. And then if the credit union gave you a donation, you could track it here. So the system does have the ability on a basic level to be a donor tracking system too. There's the ability to track donations both in the organization section and in the mentor section. So if I wanted to add a new donation, I would click here and let's say the credit union donated $1,000 to the program. That information would go in here. You can also track when a thank you note goes out, make sure that you sent a thank you, and you can put any comments about the donation here as well. But so, for example, we'll say, okay, so the credit union gave us $1,000. We need to make sure that we thank them. You can go over to this Reminders tab and set a reminder. And that works the same way as the reminder I showed you earlier with the mentee section. So if I were to hop back over to the home screen, this would pop up as a reminder. The other two tabs here, comments is just a place for you to store just any information that you have about the relationship with the organization. This is especially important if you have turnover at a program coordinator position and you want to get some information about like previous relationships with the organization. You can store that information here. There's a document section. So similar to how you can upload documents in the mentor and mentee files, you could add, if you had an MOU or if you wanted to scan a copy of a check, whatever system you're using for tracking information about these organizations, you can upload image, Word doc, or PDF, any sort of file that you need to have on file here, just by clicking on the Add a New Document button. And you can also just store brief information about what the document is. The last two sections I'm going to show you are classes and activities. And this is a way for you to track participation from mentors and mentees. So if I hop over to the classes section, this is intended more for something that's going to be an ongoing class or training throughout the year. So for example, we're working with Everybody Wins Vermont, which has lunchtime reading programs throughout the state. And so they are actually tracking their mentor or mentee attendance and the times that they meet, not through like the session section that I showed you earlier, but through this class section where they're able to store attendance at each meeting. So if we had a power lunch set up, for example, when mentors and mentees are meeting together, you create this class, and then you have three tabs up here. So you have mentees, and this is where you can enroll mentees from your agency into this specific program. By clicking on the Enroll Mentees button, it'll prompt you to see this list of all the youth who are participating in the program. And you simply click on Enroll, and they will then appear in this list. It works very similarly for the Mentors tab. You simply click on Enroll Mentors, and you'll see Ned now appears here. The last tab is Attendance, and this, as I said, this is intended for like an ongoing series of trainings, events, workshops, whatever the case may be. So in this case, there are different attendance days. So to track attendance, you would go to Add a New Attendance Day. Select the date for when this is happening, how many hours. This comment section is intended to kind of give a summary of what happened during the day. So you'll see here that there's a list of the different mentees in the system and the mentors. And you basically just go through and you see there's the option for attended, did not attend, and excused. There's also the option to do don't set attendance, which is if for whatever reason you have mentors and mentees who could meet on multiple days in the system, you can select that option and have it so they're not counted against, basically they're not counted as not attending if they met during a different day during the week. So now we've created this attendance date that's added to the system, and anytime we want to go look at it, you can just click on it, and there you go. The other thing you can do, if we go over to back to our matches screen, is if I want to see information about a mentor and a mentee and just the different classes that they attended, I can click on the mentor or mentee file and go over to this classes tab. And I can see Samuel Adams as a mentor has attended Power Lunch twice. I can look at the attendance. And I can see the different days that he attended. And I also could just click on this magnifying glass next to Power Lunch if I wanted to get more details. The last tab I'm going to go over quickly here is activities. And this is similar in concept to the idea of classes, but I would think about this more as a one-time event. So if you have a bowling night as like a special event for mentors and mentees, you have a mentor appreciation night where you just have mentors getting together to be recognized. You have the ability to track attendance in these as well. So if you add a new activity by clicking on that button on the right, we'll say this is mentor-mentee softball game. And we'll say it was hosted by the Stowe High School, and the event in total took 6 hours. So now that I've created this event, I can go ahead and click on this tab here that says Assigned Mentees. And based off of who attended that event, I can track that here. So we'll say that a good number of kids ended up going to the softball party. And I'll do the same thing for the mentors who ended up attending. Now, similar to what I showed you before, that information is tracked permanently in the system. And if I wanted to go to an individual mentee's file, I could click on the magnifying glass next to that mentee's name, and I'll see under activities that Jill Bates has attended 2 activities. And one of them was the mentor-mentee softball game. And I can, again, click on that to go back to it. And I can click, since I selected Stowe High School as an organization that hosted it, I can click on that organization to be brought back to this file here. And I could set a reminder if I felt really good about how the event went last year and wanted to remind myself to get things ready next year to plan for it. So now if I set myself this reminder, it will pop up here in the reminder section. But as of July 1st of 2014, this will pop up on the home screen and just be a prompt like, oh, okay, so if we want to do that softball game again, we need to contact Stowe High School. So this is just a built-in system for tracking that type of information and just being able to have that stored for the future. And you'll see that my other reminder from earlier to thank the credit union for their donations showed up here as well. So after I send them a thank you note, I would go ahead and mark this as completed. And that basically takes us through the majority of the system here. What I'm going to go ahead and do now is talk a little bit more about the surveys. And I'm actually going to have Chad jump on the call here and give us a walkthrough of how the survey system works and sort of how it came about. So Chad, if you want to jump in now, you can go ahead and give us an overview.
Hi, everybody. Sorry, we're just unmuting me. Thanks so much for being on the webinar here. And I know we're getting short on time here, so I'm going to go through the surveys and then go through the pricing, and then we'll get to the questions you all have been typing in. So as Benji mentioned, the surveys were put together with a development team, a design team, mentoring programs personnel throughout the state, pulling from surveys that existed already, doing some research, and putting together what we have now. They're not up and running yet. The finalized version should be done by the end of the month so that folks that are on the database can hop on and use them. So just to clarify a few things, the surveys are going to be available for all levels of users in PDF form. So that, and when we, Benji, if you want to go over to just the document library. They're not there currently, but under the document library there will be all the surveys for the 4 constituents that we have surveys for: mentees, mentors, parents, and teachers and counselors. They'll all be there for you to download and use, regardless if you're paying for the system or not. The difference would be if you're paying for the system, you'd be able to actually track it with the mentees to each mentee in the system, so you can track it over the years using the Vermont Mentoring Database, and the fact that the mentors would be able to fill out their surveys using the mentor login. So if we want to go over to just a mentee, this is how you'd access the surveys if you're a paid user going through the system this way. So say you pick Bart Simpson. If you go all the way to the bottom tab there on surveys, you can see that there's different options. So mentors would fill out the survey themselves using the system, and that data would show up there as an entry. But if you had a teacher or counselor, if you want to click on Add Entry there, Benji, you'd probably have them fill it out on a paper copy, and then you would be the one inputting it there. So you fill out your name, you put in the date, position or role, and then time of period of match. So we have pre-match. If you want to go back to that time period of match, maybe there are 3 options. There's pre-match, there's during, and then there's exit. The idea that you'd actually have people fill out surveys to get some baseline data before they are matched, and then during the match, ideally once a year, you do a during match survey, and then when the match closed, you do an exit survey. So we're not going to spend too much time going through all of them, all the questions. It's something that was set by a group of mentoring folks throughout the state, and we hope that it's something that programs would see useful and really want to use to collect data on a yearly basis for their mentee matches. If you want to go back to the surveys tab, Benji, you can see that the other ones there are the mentee, and then also the teacher, or the parent, and guardian. So all those surveys are a little bit different. The mentee survey, if you want to go to Add Entry, the bigger difference to the mentee survey is that they're actually different surveys based on the age. So you have age 9 and under and 10 and over. So that's just a quick rundown of what the surveys are. It's something that we definitely can help you as you get acquainted with the system, get more familiar with them. But I wanted to give you a quick summary. So moving on from surveys, just keeping the time in mind here so we have time for questions, I wanted to chat a little bit more about the pricing structure. So if you look at the slide that's up on your screen now, Mobius has taken on the yearly cost of the system, knowing that programs are going to buy into the system. So Benji also mentioned that the system was covered, the implementation of the system in the first year of it, which is up to this April 2014, up to that, so end of March, is covered through a grant from the Henderson Foundation. So what we are paying CiviCore for on those year 1, year 2, and year 3 and beyond is to host a website and for some technical assistance to help troubleshoot things. If we want to make edits to the system beyond that, we have to pay an hourly rate. So what we did was the actual system, the original payment system, was set by a development team as well that was working on developing the database. And then Mobius made some slight adjustments just to make sure that the cost of the database on a yearly scale was covered by the programs that bought into the system. So we tried to keep the matches around about, the cost around about $10 a match. We then presented this to the Program Leadership Council, who approved the cost structure, and we feel that it will be affordable for programs and hopefully actually save staff time by how intuitive the system is, so that will equal out the cost, if not save money for programs and looking at it that way. So from there, you can look at the different fee structures based on the number of matches that are there. They go up as you get more mentors. The cost per match actually goes down as you get a little bit further along with the number of mentors you have. Programs that buy into the system, hopefully as we add more programs and as more programs get started up and buy into the system, the full cost of the system each year will be covered by those fees. It may not happen in the first couple of years, and that's something that Mobius is willing to take on financially. Beyond that, we're not looking for Mobius to churn a profit on this. Really, we're looking for any excess funding that comes in, 3 years down the road. If we end up bringing in $13,000 to $12,000, using that money first to make sure that we have some money there as we need to make adjustments to the system, as people see new things that they want to add. And then once we have some money set aside for that, Mobius would start looking at possibly reimbursing the time that Benji is putting into the system to actually be the one that's overseeing it and assisting programs. So we're not looking to make money off it, we're really looking to make sure that it's something that is out there and cost affordable for programs. Billing real quick, we can talk a little bit more about this later, but billing real quick would start, you'd be signing on pretty much from here on out. You'd be talking to email and Benji if you're interested in getting on the database. And then billing would actually be from just this year, April to June, and then from the years on, it would be starting in July and going through June. So, for example, next year, if you ended the year in June, so your school-based mentoring program ended the year in June with 30 mentors. Come July 1, you get an invoice from the system for the following year in that $350 level because you ended with 30. Come January, you have 45, 60 mentors. You're still at that $350 level for the full year. Just to make life simple, it's going to be set where you're at when the billing goes out in July 1, and you stay at that level until the following year. That's basically it with the pricing. Why don't we hop in to answer questions about that or anything else you may have had that you typed in that chat window while we were talking.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and jump in and try to get through as many of these questions as possible. Thank you all for going through the process of typing these all out. Please continue to add to that list as we go through. I am getting a little bit of feedback when I unmute everybody, so I'm going to kind of try to just unmute people one at a time and have them give me feedback on their question and follow up. So Amy, your first question was, in the mentor application, if somebody's declined as a mentor, does the system send them a message? I was wondering if you were asking whether or not the system sends a message to the mentor or if it sends a message to the agency. No, it doesn't. It's on. It's not set up that way in the system. I think it's on the program to follow up if they see fit. There's also like a release waiver at the end of the application that basically states that the agency has the right to decline the potential applicant as a mentor if the agency sees fit. Kathy, yeah, you asked if we could add questions to the application. The answer is, at this point, we've worked with mentoring programs from around the state for quite a while to try to come up with a standard application, and within that, we've come up with some customization capability. So there are questions that can be turned on or off. But as far as adding new questions, we just have the set list that people have come up with as trying to keep things standardized so that we create this as a resource for everyone to use and sort of be collecting similar information. Jackie, does that answer your question as well?
It does. It answers my question.
Yes.
Amy, you had another question about just how information is stored on the database, how much storage it is, how secure it is. So I guess I can address that first of all by saying that each agency can only see its own information. Within the agency, there's the ability to have individual programs that can only see what's going on in their program as far as youth and mentor information. On the statewide level, so what I can see as an administrator is pretty limited. We've made it so that we're collecting broader aggregate information, but I can't see any names or contact information. It's really just about like collecting relevant like aggregate information about demographics and where mentors and mentees are coming from. So the referral source that I talked about before. And I guess as a follow-up question, does that answer what you were asking for before, Amy? If you have concerns about the overall just security of the system, I can certainly get you a good referral of information from CiviCore, the database company that's hosting this for us. And they can talk a little bit more about the actual like, internet security aspects. So this says Jenny, but I think it's either Sarah or Catherine. You ask if there's a place on the mentee form to reject the mentee is not appropriate or appropriate for another program similar to the mentor. That's not something that we have in place right now, but that is a really good idea. And we're sort of set as far as what we're going to have in the system for rolling things out, but we're looking for feedback from programs, and we're certainly looking to make changes and future additions to the functionality down the line. I'll quickly go through and say there will be the ability to track all different types of programs, Jackie. And so if there's any type of program that you don't see in that list, we can certainly add it. And we are looking to make this open to any sort of mentoring program that's using the system. And there is an option currently in there that's community and school-based, so that would fit the hybrid category that I think you're going for. Sarah or Catherine had another question about, can the mentee form be accessed from the website as well? At this point, we don't have that functionality in place, but it is something that we would look at possibly adding in the future if it's something that programs really want to see. And that there certainly could be the ability down the line to have that if it's something that would be useful. So I think what you're asking for is similar to how there's an online mentor application, that maybe there could be an online mentee application too. Hillary, you asked about do activities show up as mentoring time for the match? So
right.
I did show you briefly before that you can track the number of hours that happen during an activity. And this is probably a good opportunity to just say quickly that within the system, any data that you input can be reported on. I didn't walk through the reporting process yet because we don't have all the reports in place, but it would be very easy to set up the ability to track hours, to create a report that could track hours both from when mentors and mentees meet during their sessions, and then also add the activity hours too.
Okay. And then just be on the lookout for mentors adding double time if I'm tracking it and then they track it too.
Yeah, so that would be something that you would need to go through and just probably double check manually.
Okay, thank you.
So Amy, another question that you had was, is there a way to link and upload information from the database to send emails or letters to groups? So basically, essentially do a mail merge from within the database. There isn't that ability, but there will be the ability to, if you wanted to export all of your mentor contact information into an Excel file that could be used as a mail merge with a Word document. It would be pretty easy to set up a report to do that, and we're planning to have that ability right off the bat. And your second question within that was, it would be nice to be able to store documents here. I didn't quite understand what you meant by that, but if you could elaborate, I could certainly see if that makes sense. Maybe you could follow up with me after the call and we can have a follow-up conversation. But as far as storing documents in the system, there's the ability throughout to upload any sort of Word doc, Excel sheet, PDF, anything that you think is, and images as well. So if you want to save pictures for mentors and mentees and you have a media release, you can store that information in here too. You also asked about the referral page. So you asked if there's a way if teachers and guidance counselors can add a possible mentee. There is the ability to give them, a basic login into the system. So you could make them basically a restricted program coordinator who could only see information for a specific program. And you could give them the ability to log in, and similar to how you would add a mentee to the system, a teacher or guidance counselor could do it that way. But we don't at this point have an online form like the mentor application for mentees. It seemed like it was going to be something that was more complicated and handled differently per program, but it is something that we would think about doing in the future if enough programs are interested in doing it. Let's see, does anybody else have any questions at this point?
I have the question of when we can start using the database. I was late signing on, so I didn't hear the introduction.
Oh, okay. I'm going to send this back over to Chad just to talk about when the payment structure starts.
So you can start using the database basically by emailing Benji and setting up a time to get set up and have him help input data and sort of make sure you guys are all on the same page. That's pretty much a first come, first serve thing now, managing Benji and Darren's time to set up things with you. And then that would be, that you wouldn't actually start paying until April. Does that answer your question, Jackie?
Yes, I didn't understand that we weren't starting to pay until April. We're doing the basic information now, inputting our current information, and then pay in April for next year. Is that correct?
So it would be paying in April for the 3 months that is not covered by the Henderson grant until our fiscal year starts again in July. So you'd be paying, if you have 10 matches right now and you sign up for the database, you'd be in the 10 match level. And that's what you'd get charged for 3 months of that come April. So if you had 10 matches, your bill in April would be for $25 for those 3 months. And then you'd get billed again in July for the following year. Does that make sense? So you can sign up right now, get going. It's not costing you anything until April, and it's just for those 3 months, April, May, June, that you'd be paying for this year.
Great. Thanks for that.
A couple of the questions we saw on here, Benji, if you want to talk about how far down the line changes and improvements would be.
So we're looking at probably, as far as the changes and improvements to the system go, as Chad said, we're finalizing the surveys right now, and so that is functionality that's going to be in place as of the month. But as far as future changes to the system go, we're probably looking to gather feedback from programs over the course of the first year of having the system in place, and then we'll be looking to make some more changes down the line. And as Chad talked a little bit when he was going over the pricing, we're hoping to have some money from within the cost that everybody's paying into the system to be able to make those changes down the line. And so we're really looking to gather feedback from your experience with the system and make sure that everything we're doing is meeting the needs of the users. So if you come up with something that you think could be done differently, or that a feature that you would like to see added, like, definitely tell us, and we're listening, and we're certainly looking to improve upon the system each year. But it's at this point, as far as anything that would get changed immediately, it's probably going to be a little further down the line, because we want to give people a chance to really test things out and get a feel for it, and then we'll have a better sense of what could be done to make it even better down the road. So Catherine, or Sarah, I think this is Catherine, you say, what would you recommend to programs as a second database to complement this one for doing letters and mail merges? I would say this is really intended to be a mentoring database more than a donor database. There is basic functionality to store donor information. There are a lot of really good and pretty inexpensive databases out there, and I'd be happy to talk with you about that after this call. Mobius uses a great one called Little Green Light that allows you to do mail merges from within it, and also is able to line up with doing like online email marketing. Like, we use MailChimp, which is similar to Constant Contact, and then we're also able to connect to Wufoo and connect and do surveys and RSVPs that connect directly to the donors within the system. So there are a lot of options out there. I think that this is something that could be used as a basic donor database, but especially if you have a larger program, I'd recommend using a different database for your donor work. See, does anybody else have any questions? I think we're getting just about to the end of the scheduled time that we have here for today. But I do want to, if anybody else has any questions, feel free to jump in now and ask. And if we didn't get to your question on this call, you can follow up with us afterwards, and we'll go ahead and we'll get back to you if possible. Feel free to give us a call or email after the call. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining the call today, and I'll be sending a follow-up email with information about how you can get joined on, and I appreciate you taking the time to go over the system with us.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.